Gopijana Vallabha Nivaraka Yasodandana Braja Jana Yasodandana Braja Jana Amunatira Manachari Namunatira Jaya
The song that you probably try, say the whole world should fall. Giant Guru Shapatan, Hari Vajaksha, Asoka, Shiva Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki, Ananta Gopi Vaishnava Ramacharya Shrivaya Thakur Ki, Ramjaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Hari Govardhan Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govardhan Shama Kundara Kundi Govardhan Brahma Vishnu Ki Navi Maikoram Ki Rushtam Chatra Janam Ki Gangama Ki Chandama Ki Bhakti Ki Samaveta Bhakti Ki Jai Nitai Govardhan All Punya Rupasita Punya Rupasita Etavana Vayo Dharma Punya Rupasita Yo Bhuta Shoka Harshabhyam Bhuta Shoka Harshabhyam Bhuta Shoka Harshabhyam Atma Shochati Rishyati Atma Shochati Rishyati Atma Shochati Rishyati Harshabhyam Atma Shochati Rishyati Etavana Vyayo Dharma Punya Shloka Rupasita Yo Bhuta Shoka Harshabhyam Atma Shochati Rishyati Etavana Vyayo Dharma Upasita
Punyashloka Rupasita
Yobuta Shogahasavyam
Yobuta Shukaharsabhyam
Atma Shokshati Krishati
Atma Shojati Hrishyati
Etavan avyayodama
Etavan Avyayo Dharma
Punyashloka
Punyashloka Rupasitaha
Yobuta
Yobuta Shokaharsabhyam
Atma
Atma Shojati Hrishyati
Etavan avyo dharma.
Etavan Avyayo Dharma
Punyashloka rupasita.
Punyashloka Rupasita
Yabhuta shoka harshabhyam.
Yobuta Shokaharsabhyam
Atma shochati grishyati.
Atma Shojati Hrishyati
Etavan avyo dharma
Etavan Avyayo Dharma Punyashloka Rupasitaha
Yobuta Shogahasavyam
Yobuta Shokaharsabhyam
Atma Shokshati Krishati
Atma Shojati Rishati Etavan avyayodharma
Etavan Avyayo Dharma
Punyashloka Yupashita
Punyashloka Rupasitaha
Yobuta Shoka Harshavyam
Yobuta Shokaharsabhyam
Atma Shojati Rishati
Atma Shojati Hrishyati Etavan
Etavan avyayodharma
Etavan Avyayo Dharma
Punyashloke Upasita
Punyashloka Rupasita
Yobuta Shoka Harshavyam
Yobuta Shokaharsabhyam
Atma Shojati Rishati
Atma Shojati Hrishyati Etavan Avyayo Dharma
Etavan avyayodharma
Punyashloka Rupasitaha
Punyashloka Upasita
Yobuta Shokaharsabhyam
Yobuta Shoka Harshavyam
Atma Shojati Hrishyati
Atma Shojati Rishati
Etavan Avyayo Dharma Punyashloka Rupasitaha Yobuta Shokaharsabhyam Atma Shojati Hrishyati Etavan
This much.
This much. Avyaya
Imperishable.
Imperishable
Dharma.
Dharma
Religious principle.
Religious principle
Punyashlokai.
Punyashlokai
By famous persons who are celebrated as pious.
by famous persons who are celebrated as pious
Upasita.
Upasita
Recognized.
recognized
Ya.
Ya
Which.
which
Bhuta. Of the living beings.
of the living beings
Shoka.
Shoka
By the distress.
by the distress
Harshabhyam.
Harshabhyam
And by the happiness.
and by the happiness
Atma.
Atma
The mind.
mind
Shochati.
Shojati
Laments.
limit
Krishyati.
Krishyati
Feels happiness.
feels happiness.
Translation. If one is unhappy to see the distress of other living beings and happy to see their happiness, these religious principles are appreciated as imperishable by exalted persons who are considered pious and benevolent. Responsibly. If one is unhappy to see the distress of other living beings
Because of the distress of the living beings
and happy to see their happiness,
happy to see their happiness.
these religious principles are appreciated as imperishable
These religious principles are appreciated as imperishable
by exalted persons
by exalted persons
who are considered pious and benevolent.
who are considered pious and benevolent.
It's a very wonderful statement here. When he's actually, as we'll see Prabhupada explains in the first part, he's actually expounding real religious principles. This is what religion means. Religion doesn't mean you go to church once a week and you feel all nice, but it actually means giving your life for the welfare of others. And the welfare of others doesn't mean to open a hospital or distribute, just food or something like that. It means to actually awaken the living entity to what is the real, this spark within, the real benefit of self, the real purpose or the goal of human life. This is what real life actually means. Because otherwise, if people don't understand what is the purpose of life, what is the goal of life, it means they will be forced to take birth after birth after birth in this material world. They won't actually achieve the supreme destination. And this is the talk the other day, that was Kavaca. The supreme welfare activity means to help others to understand what is the goal, what is the destination of life, because we're wandering here in this pure world, birth after birth after birth, countless births. You cannot actually count how many births in this pure world. And for the living entity to understand what is their true destination, what is it, where is their true place, this is the supreme welfare. Help them understand that, because then the living entity can perfect their life. Otherwise, we're just wasting time here in the pure world. We don't know what our destination is. Prabhupada's purport. One generally follows different types of religious principles or performs various occupational duties according to what is given to him by the laws of material nature. In this verse, however, real religious principles are explained. Everyone should be unhappy to see others in distress and happy to see others happy. And isn't this somewhat the opposite of what we see in this material world? It's like, why is the news so popular? Like how often on the news do they, I'm not really sure, but how often on the news do they have happy stories? Or talk, present how people are happy in this world and how they're having a good time. Generally speaking, what they're presenting is how people are suffering. Economic calamity, there's a war going on here, these people died in a car crash. It's all about the distress of others. And it seems that people become happy by seeing that. They get some sort of satisfaction by seeing how others are suffering. Everyone should be unhappy to see others in distress and happy to see others happy. Atmavat Sarvabhuta Shru. This is a statement from Chandra Pandit, Niti Shastra. One should feel the happiness and distress of others as his own. It is on this basis that the Buddhist religious principles of non-violence, ahimsa, dharma, dharma, is established. We feel pain when someone disturbs us, and therefore we should not inflict pain upon other living beings. And this is such a simple principle, but very seldom understood principle of life. It's like, if I feel pain when someone cuts my throat, why would I want to cut the throat of someone else? But we see, as I was mentioning the other day in the class, that every day millions upon millions of living entities are killed in slaughterhouses around the world. Yet, if someone comes to that person who's eating the meat to cut their throat, what do they do? Oh, please, don't kill me, please. They're begging, don't kill me. They're fearful of the pain. Yet, every day, they're benefiting or taking the fruits, if you like, of the pain of others. When a living entity, when its throat is cut, it experiences tremendous pain. The process of leaving the body causes the living entity tremendous pain. And someone who's intelligent can understand that if I feel pain, if my head is smashed and my throat is cut, then it's natural that another living entity will feel the same pain. So how could I, a compassionate person is going to think, how could I possibly do that to another living entity? So it gives us an understanding of the consciousness of living entities in this world, because we're seeing that every day, millions upon millions of living entities. I mean, I don't know what the latest statistics are, but as I mentioned today, I read this article in Time magazine, it must have been almost 20 years ago, where they were saying that each day in the US, alone, 6 million chickens were being killed. So it must be much, much more than that now. And not to mention cows and pigs and sheep, and how many abortions there are each year. Millions. And in some countries, I actually saw a statistic not so long ago on abortions. And in some countries, there's actually more abortions than there are live births. Just to give you an understanding of how simple this life is. And it's, it's kind of really interesting that people are so self-centered that, that they don't see themselves suffer, but they couldn't care about another living entity suffering. And actually you see, sometimes they find it enjoyable when they see that others are suffering. Just like, I saw a video the other day, it was just a short video on one of the news stations, about this war in Ukraine. And there was some guys, flying a drone or something, and the drone was dropping munitions on and then the tank was very happy about it. But then I was thinking, but there's people inside that tank who've just been killed as a result of you dropping the bomb. So how can you be, happy that you're blowing? I mean, obviously, part of war means you're going to kill people, but not that we, feel happiness because these people have been killed. But you do it just as a matter of duty. So it's kind of interesting how hard-hearted people have become, and this is largely as a result of meat eating. Because they're killing so many living entities just for the satisfaction of the tongue, then the heart becomes very, very hard. And there's many other things that contribute to it, but that's very very important. Yeah. So we feel pain when someone disturbs us, and therefore we should not inflict pain upon other living beings. Lord Buddha's mission was to stop unnecessary animal killing, and therefore he preached that the greatest religious principle is non-violence. One cannot continue killing animals and at the same time be a religious man. Rob's saying it's not, they're completely incompatible. How can you kill other living entities and claim to be a religious person? That is the greatest hypocrisy. Jesus Christ said, do not kill. But hypocrites, nevertheless, maintain thousands of slaughterhouses while posing as Christians. Such hypocrisy is condemned in this verse. One should be happy to see others happy, and one should be unhappy to see others unhappy. This is the principle to be followed. Unfortunately, at the present moment, so-called philanthropists and humanitarians advocate the happiness of humanity at the cost of the lives of poor animals. That is not recommended herein. This verse clearly says that one should be compassionate to all living entities, regardless of whether human, animal, tree, or plant. All living entities are the sons of the Supreme Person of Godhead. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 14.4, Savayona Shakuntaya Mutaya Sambhavantiya Tashang Brahma Mahadyoni Aham Bija Pradapitaha. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material world, and that I am the seed-giving Father. The different forms of these living entities killing. And the next verse, Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma, the Shoshati, the Pashati, Sama Savesha Bhuteshu, one who is transcendently situated, at once realizes the Supreme Brahman, becomes fully joyful. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living being, every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service to me. So this Samasavesha Bhuteshu, he sees all of the entities on the same. And then Krishna says that in that state, he attains pure devotional service to me. So one actually understands the position of all jivas as being, all sons and servants of God. This person actually transcendently situated, and he never laments or desires. A Vaishnava, therefore, is truly a perfect person because he laments to see others unhappy and feels joy at seeing others happy. A Vaishnava is Parakrita. He is always unhappy to see the conditioned soul in an unhappy state of pluralism. Therefore, Vaishnava is always busy preaching Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So this is a wonderful verse and purport by Srila Prabhupada, where the verse is actually explaining what is religion, what is real religion, and what is the actual activity or what's required of someone who's claiming to be a religionist. And for me, the real focus of learning in this verse is being willing to sacrifice our life for the benefit of others. And that doesn't mean like we're going to, as we see here with the Diksha, he gives up his body. It's Prabhupada, this is why the commentaries of the Acharyas are so important for us, because they help us to apply this teaching in the modern environment. Like we see, I know that up north here, I think there's some islands off the west coast. I can't remember, it might be the Orkneys or something like that. There's all these old stone dwellings. They're just like basically stone igloos, where monks used to go many years ago. And they lived a very, very simple, austere life. But the idea was like their life was dedicated to the service and to the remembrance of God. But in this day, and that's definitely a laudable or glorious life, to dedicate life to God. But that's more in the line of what we call a Bhajananandi, or someone who's focused on their own self-development. But in the line of ISKCON, especially coming in the line of our Gaudiya Acharyas, especially coming in the line of someone as noble and great as Prahlad Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada has explained that Gaudiya Vaishnavas are Goshthiyanandis, and Goshthiyanandi is one who gives their life, who sacrifices their life for spreading this Krishna conscious mission, because he sees, someone who's actually aware, sees that in this material world, so many people are suffering very, very difficult lives. And you don't have to be very smart to see, you just have to look around a little bit, you can see how much people are suffering. Just like, we were on Harinam the other day, and you can see like so many intoxicated people. So many. They're just like completely intoxicated out of their brains or whatever drugs or alcohol they're consuming. And they're trying to find some happiness in the world, but actually their endeavor to find happiness brings them misery. Or we see, so many people, we call it in Australia, they call them rough sleepers. What they call them here, but they sleep on the streets. They have no money, they have nothing. And you see in London also the same thing. It's like they've got these shopping trolleys that they push around. And the shopping trolleys are just full of rubbish, plastic bags and old plastic bowls and stuff. It's just stuff that scrounges around the streets. And to you and I have absolutely no value whatsoever. But if you try to take something from some bit of garbage out of the shopping trolley, they might kill you because they're so attached to it. And even Prabhupada, sometimes he would say in this age of Kali, the prophet is proud of his pain. It's not nothing. He's so proud and so attached because they don't understand what is the true wealth of the human form of life. What actually, and I think you were saying that, I'm not sure, about Prabhupada one time. This happened in Australia. Prabhupada was on a morning walk. It wasn't a morning walk, and he saw people playing lawn bowls. I don't know if you know what lawn bowls is. They roll these balls down. They have a grass field, and they roll these balls down. And the black balls, and the black ball my grandfather used to play. The black balls are not quite round. They've got a little bit of odd shape to it. Like one side is smaller than the other, so it goes in that. And the idea is they've got to try and get this ball as close as they can to the white ball, which is down there on the field. And so Prabhupada saw that. He saw this, because in Australia, it's changed now, like young people play now. It used to just be old men who play this game. And Prabhupada saw these old men playing lawn bowls, and he saw them cry. He just thought it was such a lamentable situation that these old men were wasting the human form of life on playing such a useless game. And not even just looking at others, just looking at ourselves. And I was reflecting on this morning, that actually I waste so much time on other activities that aren't directly connected to Krishna. And I could use that time very well in the service of Krishna, but it really gets down to the fact that I just don't have sufficient taste to want to be able to dedicate my whole life, 100% to the service of Krishna. So this is a really, for me, this is, hopefully I can gain some realization out of speaking on this verse and reading this verse to come to this point where just every moment of every day I'm just dedicated to the service of Krishna. Because this is, as Prabhupada's talking here, he quotes this line, Bhagavatam. This is really interesting. This is actually from a verse from the Stavavada. There's a song in the Stavavada called Vilat Pushpanjali, written by Raghunatha Swami. And it's 104 verses, and these verses are focusing on glorifying Radharani and praying for her to become qualified to be situated in the Lord's Spirit. But this prayer is actually glorifying Sanatana Dharma. Then very lucky that Burning Madhavaka actually happens to have this tree. I'm traveling with it. And I'll just read to you this one verse. This is one of the advantages of traveling with a great soul like Burning Madhavaka, which is so much shastra with it. And sometimes I get a little bit inspired to do something. This is verse 6 from the Vilat Pushpanjali, which, as I said, is one song. Naragyu Bhakti Rasam Prayatnai Akayayam Mam Abhi Anabhikshun Andam Krivam Buddhiya Paladukha Dukhi Sanatanastam Prabhum Ashrayami. I was unwilling to drink the nectar of devotional service, laced with renunciation, but being an ocean of mercy and so kind to the poor, Sanatana Goswami took pity upon me and made me drink. May I live forever in the shade of his lotus feet. So we see that this line, Paladukha Dukhi, Prabhupada quoted that many times. I can't remember how many times because my database is not working, but he quoted it many, many times throughout his books. And often he would say that a Vaishnava is Paladukha Dukhi, meaning that a Vaishnava is, when he sees, so Pada means like great or supreme. Yeah. And so when a Vaishnava sees that someone else is unhappy, he becomes very unhappy. Or when a Vaishnava sees that someone else is happy, he becomes very happy. But does that mean, like when we're walking down the streets in Glasgow and we see these drunks, carrying on and whatever it is they do, and they think they're very happy because they're intoxicated, we become happy? No, we become sad because we see that immersed in illusion They don't actually understand the real purpose of life. And we see that when someone becomes connected with the real purpose of life, meaning when they become connected with Krishna, they actually become blissful. Sandhananda Visheshakma, we see that Rupa Goswami explains, they experience this bliss which is, it's just, it keeps becoming deeper and deeper and deeper, it becomes thicker and thicker. Their bliss knows no bounds when they become connected with Krishna. But when they're when they become immersed in this ocean of worldly sorrows, as the Acharyas explain, when they become immersed in this material world, thinking that this is the way that they're going to achieve happiness, and struggling and endeavoring with so much effort to try to become happy in this material world, but only bringing upon themselves so much misery. Another question, very interesting. But not only is so lamentable, no, we want to do something. We want to try to give them Krishna consciousness. Therefore, we see the devotees that go out and hurry up. We see the devotees distribute Krishna Prasad. We see the devotees distribute transmitted literatures with the intention of trying to make their life more spiritual, with the intention of trying to awaken them to the reality of their situation. So I'll read a little bit from this. This is very, very wonderful. I'm not going to read too much because it's kind of like, there's a lot of pages here. It's probably about 40 or 50 pages. Srila Prabhupada was fond of quoting the phrase Paradukkha, emphasizing that all those self-satisfied Vaishnavas empathize with the suffering which souls undergo due to being separated from Krishna. So we see Prabhupada saying the same here. He's talking about how the entities are suffering in the world because they're suffering in this material world because of their separation from Krishna, and they actually don't even understand that their position or who they really are. They don't understand that actually they are servants of Krishna, and that they should use their life to devote to Krishna. They're thinking that this is as we know in the Bhagavad Gita explains, they're thinking they're a material body. This is the beginning of illusion. To think that I'm a material body, to think that this is me, and this is my source of enjoyment. This is the root of avidya, the root of all ignorance. To think that I'm a material body, when actually we understand. Jiva Sukha Krishna, I'm Krishna's servant. So Prabhupada would often quote this verse. And he would give Parikshit Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, and Lord Shiva as examples of oceans of mercy. So we see, like Parikshit Maharaj, he gave up his kingdom. And it wasn't just like, he was Prime Minister of a little country like England. He was the emperor of the world. He had so much wealth, all the other kings were willing to come and bow at his feet. But he gave all that up to take to the practices of devotional service because he knew that this was actually what was going to be beneficial. And we see as a result of his renunciation, as a result of his endeavors in devotional service, this glorious literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, is spoken. So, this is an example of Parikshit Maharaj. And also Prahlad Maharaj. We see Prahlad Maharaj is a classic example of Paradukkha, because what happened is when he saw Lord Nrsimha was wanting to bestow benediction upon him. But he was not interested in that. He said, no, what about my father? What about these other people? And he didn't want to give up or take some material benediction. He wanted to see that these other persons achieve Krishna consciousness. He wanted to see that they achieve the body of God. So and God was there himself, willing to give him anything he wanted, yet he wouldn't accept that. And also, we see here, other great Vaishnavas. We can think of many of them. Also, of course, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was living in Vrindavan, at the Radha Mandir, in the place that he called the spiritual center of the universe. He has such a wonderful situation, especially for Vaishnava Prabhupada's Kavaca, such a wonderful transcendental situation where he was just every day absorbed in Krishna consciousness and praying to the six Goswamis, praying to Lord Chaitanya, and writing transcendental literature. He was just completely absorbed. And he gave that up to travel all the way to New York to give us Krishna consciousness. He sacrificed, and this is what sacrificing one's life is all about. And we can see so many great souls in this movement of Krishna consciousness sacrifice their lives to give Krishna consciousness to others. And this needs to become our aspiration. That, not just an aspiration, but actually something we do when we sacrifice our lives for the benefit of others. And there's a nice verse that Maharaj Srimad quotes here. This is from the Bhagavatam. Kapyanti loka kapena sarva prayasho jana paramaradhanam tadhi purusha shakya. It is said that great personalities almost always accept voluntary suffering because of the suffering of people in general. This is considered the highest method of worshipping the Supreme Person of Godhead, who is present in one's heart. So, there's various verses throughout the Bhagavatam. There's a few that come to mind. There's a Tapashakrava Charan, that one's there. But also this, what's that verse? What's that start with?
That's that's the Luke chapter.
What? Yeah. And so there's a verse in the fifth canto, fifth chapter, where Lord Rishabdev includes this verse, Mayam Deho Deha Vidbhujane means village animals. Life is not meant to live like village animals. What do village animals do? Eat stool. The hogs and dogs will eat stool. Tapo Divyam Putra Kayena Shapam. So Tapo Divyam, Tapa, austerity, Divyam, divine austerity. What's divine austerity? It means austerity the same as understanding God or achieving God consciousness. Tapo Divyam Putra Kayena Shapam. Shuddha Dasma Parama Sopam. This is how one understands life. And as Prabhupada's translating here in this translation, this is considered the highest method of worshipping the Supreme Person of Godhead, who is present in one's heart. So it's like the best way of worshipping Krishna is to make sacrifice to give others Krishna consciousness. This is the thing that's most pleasing to the Lord. And we see in this Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada is asking us, actually he's imploring us, he's begging us to use our time, to use our energy to distribute transcendental literature, to distribute the holy name, to distribute Krishna, to distribute this knowledge of Krishna. Prabhupada is asking us, he's begging us to give our lives to this purpose. And we see this is what Prabhupada dedicated his life to, is giving Krishna consciousness to others. So, and for me personally, I'm so grateful that, Srila Prabhupada and so many other Vaishnavas have taken this mission seriously. Because if they hadn't taken this mission seriously, where would I be? Where would we all be? If these Vaishnavas hadn't taken this mission seriously and dedicated their life to the propagation of Krishna consciousness, we would be in a very different situation. No doubt, a very difficult situation. I remember years ago meeting with Pankaj Janaguru in Perth. It was the first time I came to Australia. And he was explaining to me his life before Krishna consciousness. He used a phrase which really impacted upon me. And he said, before I came to Krishna consciousness, I was just living like a regular dog. And when I reflect on my own life before coming in contact with Prabhupada's books, I can see this exactly what it was like for me. I was just living like a dog. And many of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we'll probably see that actually, yes, this is what I was living like. So, yeah. And through the contact or through the mercy and through the sacrifice of these devotees, we get to understand how to live our lives. What is the proper utilization of the life? And this is what this story is for me. This is the message I get from this story: is how to properly utilize our life. Is to utilize our life to give others the greatest wealth, the greatest benefit, and that is Krishna consciousness. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And there's another interesting verse in the 10th canto, where it's 10, 22, 35, explained, is the duty of every living entity to perform welfare activities for the benefit of others with his life, wealth, intelligence, and words. That's the duty. To use our life, our wealth, our intelligence, and our words simply for everyone else's benefit. And the only benefit, it's not like you can do mundane welfare activities and really get much benefit, because those things only focus on the body. You open a hospital, for instance, that will give some benefit to the body. It won't really change a person's disposition. It's just like doing Prayaschitta. We see that in the beginning of the 6th canto, it talks about at the end of the 5th canto, we see that Sukadeva Goswami is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj. The Parikshit Maharaj asking, well, how do I, because the 5th canto is describing all these different hellish planets and things like that. And so Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukadeva Goswami, well, how can I be sure that I'm not going to get in this situation? And then Sukadeva Goswami, he says, Prayaschitta Vimashana. By practicing Prayaschitta, by performing Prayaschitta, you can overcome this. And then in one of the very first verses of the 6th canto, Parikshit Maharaj says, but I actually see this as being like the bathing of an elephant. Because the elephant, they take bath and they see it, they splash water and have a great time. And they come out and they throw dirt all over themselves. So what's the point of that bathing? It's useless. Because they dirty themselves up. And then Sukadeva Goswami says, yes, I was actually just testing you to see if you're awake, basically. And he explains that, he says that actually Prayaschitta is useless because it doesn't really deal with the simple desire between the heart and the living entity. So the real essence of how to overcome this material life, and material desires, material attachments, is take to the practices of devotional service, to take up bhakti. So therefore, the devotees seeing that understand that the only solution to people's difficult life is the process of devotional service. Therefore, we aspire, therefore we strive to dedicate our lives to this practice, of this activity of giving others Krishna consciousness. Wonderful process. Okay, I think I can finish there. I don't have much else. There's so much more to say about this. Any comments or questions? Yes, Srimad, talk to Prabhu.
I just read recently that people that get depressed are very obsessive, self-obsessive, and so the reaction to being so selfish is, it can be depression. And then on the other hand, for people that really don't know much about Krishna consciousness or practicing spirituality, they have a thing called sympathetic joy. And it's where you try and transition from being envious of other people to try and rejoice in seeing somebody else happy, and then you experience happiness yourself. So I wondered, is that maybe a good bridge across, because it's a very elevated state of consciousness where you're only happy when you see others happy. So I don't know if you're familiar with the process of sympathetic joy, but it seems it would be a good transition.
Yeah. A few points there. Depression is a result of time. This is explained in Gita. When people are resolved in ignorance, it brings about depression. And you see that, people who are depressed is because their consciousness is situated well above. So the real way to get them out of that is to give them something that will help them to elevate themselves out of or of ignorance. And there's only one solution, and that's Krishna consciousness. Now, this sympathetic joy, this could be a device or a tool we use to make people receptive to the process of Krishna consciousness. But it's not going to actually change anything. Just like I live in Australia, they have a project there called Krishna Village. And basically what it is, it's a yoga school. And what they do there is like they have yoga teacher training, and people come to learn to be yoga teachers, but they give them a really heavily discounted rate, providing they do devotional service. You know, so they're engaged in cutting up vegetables, cleaning all around the temple. You know? And they're cutting up for the kitchen and stuff like that. And so when they're cutting up in the kitchen, there's kirtan blaring out. You know? When they're doing service around the temple, they're hearing kirtan, they're seeing devotees, whatever like that. But also they have the thing that if they attend the morning program, they don't have to do service. Yeah. So what happens is yoga is the bait. It attracts the fish, but the hook is the service. And once you hook them, you've got them. They become devotees. And that's what we see happening, is people take to Krishna consciousness. So, and the Prabhupada mentions this in many different places, that the intelligence of a preacher is they're looking for ways and means, they're devising ways and means to attract people so they can inject the Krishna conscious poison into their dull wood-like brains. So if you find something like this sympathetic joy, makes people open to Krishna consciousness, fine. I know, for instance, I was speaking with my wife yesterday on the phone, and she's visiting one of her nieces, really wonderful young lady, very, very intelligent. And she has a son who is, I'm not sure of what his disability is. He's got a disability anyhow, quite a serious disability. And my wife has never preached to them as such. But she's just, I mean, my wife, she's just being herself. She's very loving and caring. And many of this person's relatives and friends have, I wouldn't say rejected her, but they kind of look down on her. But she's a very intelligent young woman. And my wife has always just been very accepting and very caring. And so, her niece actually gravitates to her and sees her as her favorite auntie. And so as a result, like I was talking with her, the niece, on the phone yesterday, and she was talking about the suffering she's going through. Like she's got, I can't remember the name of it, but I get the same thing sometime in my joints. And she was just talking about various things. And so I started to just talk to her about the temporality of the body. And she accepted that because of this loving exchange between her and my wife. She becomes, because she loves my wife, therefore she obviously starts to think that, well, what is it that subconsciously is going on? Is what is it that I'm attracted to? What's this coming from? And then when I first started talking on the phone, then my wife says to the young boy Lachlan, "Say hello to Uncle Nrsimha." So he's, "Hello, Nrsimha." So he's chanting the holy name, and just by having this friendly disposition to people, by being willing to have compassion upon them, by being receptive to their situation and trying to resonate with them or make them feel comfortable, not judged. I mean, this is the big problem. Is like everyone feels so judged all the time. And let's face it, in ISKCON, we do tend to be quite judgmental of other religions and other people. Of course, they're suffering. We understand that. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is how to bring them to Krishna consciousness. And through negativity, that's never the way to bring people to Krishna consciousness. There's that really nice section that Prabhupada quotes from, I think it's Prema Vivata. And there's one place where I've tried to learn it several times, but I'm just so dull-headed I can't learn these things, where he talks about this Danta Nidaya, where he talks about a preaching strategy. Very, very effective. And Prabhupada, this is Prabhupada's preaching strategy. He's, oh my dear sir, you are such a great pundit. And you glorify the person. And he says, but give up all these things, just take to Krishna consciousness. So this is from Jagannatha Pandit, I think. This preaching strategy of like you flatter them and and then you break the teeth of their illusion. But you start off with sweet words. You speak to them in a way that makes them attracted to who you are and what it is you stand for. So if this sympathetic joy does that, then it's a good tool to use. But it's not the goal. It's just a tool. And that's the thing is sometimes we find that devotees, they get into these things, they get so caught up in it, they forget what is the goal. And sometimes we see that devotees, for instance, might do modern music as a way of presenting the Maha Mantra, but then they get so caught up in the music, they forget all about Krishna. So just use these things as a device, but don't forget, we're not musicians. We're devotees of Krishna. We're not psychologists or anything like that. We're devotees of Krishna. This has to be the essence of it. Is we're devotees of Krishna. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu.
In your relating talk, you referred to some time ago about you mentioned while explaining this particular sloka that building a hospital or a hospice is not the great thing. It is. You mentioned about self.
About what?
You said it's more about realizing self, or so. I didn't catch that point. Can you elaborate to that?
Yeah, see, like building a hospital definitely is beneficial, but it's only beneficial to the external body. Because that's not going to change the nature of the self. That's not going to help someone to understand that I'm Krishna's eternal servant. Real welfare activity means to help people understand who they are. There's a beautiful verse that Prabhupada would quote sometimes from Sanatana Goswami, where when he met Lord Chaitanya. I mean, I don't remember I just remember a few segments of the verse where Sanatana Goswami was saying that people, they glorify me as a pundit, but actually I'm just a fool because I don't understand who I am. I don't understand that I'm not this material body. And he says, I don't understand why I suffer the threefold miseries. So, of course, he did understand this, but out of humility, he's presenting the disposition of living entities. Is they're so caught up in this material body that they think they're the controller, they think they're the enjoyer, they think they're this material body. And therefore, when something happens to the material body, they become very, very disturbed. When some calamity happens to the body, they become very disturbed. But if some benefit comes to the material body, they become very happy. They become excited. They become elated, But it's all just temporary. It's all, Prabhupada would say, phantasmagoria. It just comes and goes at the will of a wisp, It just, and you see, like some people, I had a bit of experience dealing with young folks, because our son is in his 30s, but dealing with young women, and sometimes they come to you, oh, I'm so excited, and then like 10 minutes later, oh, I'm so confused. They just change so quickly, But that's because they're identifying a material body and the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are constantly in flux. Sometimes raja, sometimes sattva, sometimes tama, sometimes mixing, constantly in flux, constant competition between the modes. And if we identify with the body, we're going to identify with the modes of material nature. Therefore, we'll be constantly in flux. But if we can understand our eternal position and this kutastha, you become situated in this like steady position of understanding our actual nature, then the consciousness becomes steady, becomes peaceful. And that's this Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma. We become situated in this way. Yeah? Does that answer you? Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu. I hope it's not be too difficult a question for me to answer.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you very much for your class, the Nrsimha Kavaca, Prabhu. Yeah, it's just in regard to, when we saw it in ISKCON, we have hospitals now also, of course, like Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mumbai and like the hospice in Vrindavan. I don't know if there's any more at the moment, but and that gives the opportunity for the patients to come in contact with devotees. And so I was just thinking, many of the Bhagavatam pastimes are describing monarchies where the kings and society was structured in such a way that people who were administering what we might consider to be mundane charity work, but because the structure of the society was that would mean they would come in contact with Brahmins and perhaps come in contact with devotees also. And if we look in Srila Prabhupada's League of Devotees Constitution, then he was suggesting at that time that we open centers for people or go visit, open people for centers for people who've come out of prison or who are intoxicated, and that we apply to the government to get some funding to be able to administer to them. My question is, how do we kind of counsel young devotees or even guests who are already deeply involved in that kind of work, like what we might consider mundane welfare work, and who already perhaps in their professional careers are like involved in kind of courses and training which do touch on the spiritual aspects of life. Just like Atoksha was talking about, different forms of counseling and life coaching and the kind of work that Mahatma Prabhu does. So are we, what I'm saying, as a society, are we sufficiently knowledgeable about these fields to be able to present that our understanding and philosophy of what welfare work really is sufficient to be able to, present what you're presenting now to a more kind of professional audience?
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of discussion. And one thing is it came to mind is for instance, when you go to the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, in the foyer of Bhaktivedanta Hospital, you ever been there? Srila Prabhupada's there on Vyasa-san. And then when you go into the operating room, because I was there when it opened, and they took us on a tour. You go into the operating theater, right, and they introduce you to the chief surgeon. There's a big picture of Nrsimha ripping out the heart of Hiranyakashipu. So that's right there before you go into the operating theater. So it gives you that's the focus. And I think for us, unless we're experts in the field, in a particular field, better we don't try to convince them, because generally what happens is if you try to convince someone that what they're so attached to is wrong, it just agitates their false ego and they'll become defensive. Rather than trying to be reactive or try to, talk them out of that, convince them of the benefits of Krishna consciousness. And then as a result of them becoming, convinced of the benefits of Krishna consciousness, as a result of them studying Srila Prabhupada's books, as a result of them purifying their hearts, they will make their own arguments against these things. And so you won't have to convince people. But if you try to convince someone, against their will, it's an uphill battle. Whereas if you can just show them the benefit of Krishna consciousness, they'll come up with their own arguments why these things are not the ultimate goal, or how to present these things in a different way. Yeah. Because I don't think we have much chance convincing people otherwise. Is that okay? Okay. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada ki, Samavekta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Nitai Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.
Sangha Kavaca Prabhu ki jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.